Who will replace Brandon Nimmo in the Mets outfield? Is it Kyle Tucker? Is it Cody Bellinger? Could it be Jarren Duran or Byron Buxton? We're running through all the options on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On the show today, we are going to run through the options that the Mets have in free agency and on the trade market to replace Brandon Nimmo. In the first segment, we're going to talk about some of the corner outfielders. Second segment, we're going to run through some names that the Mets could potentially target in center field. And in the final segment, I'm going to get to some options that you might not like, but could be realistic if the Mets decide to go with more of a stopgap, as they might be waiting for some prospects to come through and help the big league club. Before we get to any of that, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the #1 daily podcast on the New York Mets. If you want to find any of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download FanDuel today. So if you look at where the New York Mets are right now, they have a pretty solid infield now that Marcus Semion's in place. And if you assume that they re-signed Pete Alonso, which is still a big assumption, but let's just say they either re-sign Pete or replace Pete, their infield is pretty locked in. And I would even go out to say, if they don't re-sign Pete Alonso, expect them to either have Mark Vientos as the first baseman and they go out and get a big-time DH, or they're going to get some type of a first baseman to replace Alonso, and then maybe Vientos is the DH. There are a lot of things in play right now, but we're going to focus on an outfield that now really only has Juan Soto and Tyrone Taylor on the 40-man roster, if you're looking at options. Sure, if I actually went to the 40, who else would be listed? Is there someone I'm forgetting? G1 Bay is on there, I bet. Is that it? Are those the three outfielders that would be listed? You have Nick Morabito, who was added to protect from the Rule 5 draft, but I just don't really forecast him making too much of a big league impact this season. And if he does, I think more mid-year. And then you have Jared Young listed as an outfielder. Those are the 5 that are listed on the 40 right now. So the Mets have to get at least one outfielder this offseason. And I say at least one because theoretically you can get a center fielder and a left fielder. But I honestly believe that Carson Benge is going to be on the opening day roster because David Stearns just keeps on mentioning his name. He mentioned it at the GM meetings. Carson Benge is going to have a chance to win a job in spring training. Then in the press conference after the Nimmo trade, Carson Benge is going to play. He says that flatly. So you can expect that Benge is going to be in the outfield mix this season. Sure, there's a chance if he has a bit bad spring training that maybe they have a Jeff McNeil stopgap or somebody else waiting for the 4 to 6 weeks in AAA that Benge might need to get ready. But they are expecting Carson Benge to be in the picture, and he could be a passable defender in center field, or he can be an above average defender in the corner. So it just depends on who the New York Mets target. When you look at the corner outfield options, Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger are the 2 names that everyone's going to be clamoring for, and rightfully so. These are 2 of the very, very best free agents on the market. Tucker is the best free agent on the market. You are talking about a 5-tool player in Kyle Tucker. He's a good defender. He hits his home runs. He steals his bases. He is just really solid and the type of guy that can just somehow rack up a 7-win season in a blink of an eye, but it hasn't happened for him yet. This is a guy that in some ways we're still waiting on the career year because in 2024, he was well on his way to have that season. In 78 games, he hit 23 homers. His weighted runs created plus was 179 on a league average of 100. That's 79% better than your league average hitter. He racked up 4 wins above replacement, actually 4.2 in half a season. He had this shin injury that never recovered, and He ended up missing most of that second half, actually all that second half, I believe. But there was a lot of buzz on Kyle Tucker last offseason when he was on the trade market because of that potential to be a fringe MVP candidate. Last season, first year and probably only a year with the Chicago Cubs, it was a good, not great season. Hit 22 homers in 136 games. Again, for context, he hit 23 homers a year before in 78 games. Stolen bases, he swiped 25. Had a good year offensively, but the WRC plus dropped off by 40 plus points. He had a 136 WRC plus. His average, which 2 years in a row had been in the 280s, it dropped to the 260s. The on-base percentage was actually still pretty good, 377. I was looking at the 408 in the 78 games that he had the year prior, but actually his 377 on base was the second best mark of his career. Bottom line, Kyle Tucker is a great player. The only issue with Kyle Tucker is the contract. This is a guy that could get a 10-year deal. He's going into his age 29 season. Actually, because of how the market has been, there's guys who've been signing deals into their 30s, into their 40s. He could have an 11-year deal on the table for all we know. So for Kyle Tucker, I'm just curious how this market plays out. I think if the bidding war never comes and he does not have the teams that are pushing that number up to 350 to 400 and getting to that crazy line, I think the Mets could swoop in and sign Kyle Tucker. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibilities, but I think it's way more likely that they look at Cody Bellinger and say, all right, this is a guy that's going to be priced at a little bit more of an affordable rate. If Kyle Tucker is making $400 million over 10 years, you're talking about a $40 million player. It's going to be very hard to build a team around Juan Soto at $51 million per and Kyle Tucker at $40 million per, especially when we still don't know what the new rules are with the upcoming CBA negotiations after this season. So I don't know how realistic the Tucker sweepstakes are, but the Cody Bellinger one, that seems like a really nice middle ground for the New York Mets where you get a guy who gives you versatility. He could be your Pete Alonso replacement. He could be your Brandon Nimmo replacement. He could be your stopgap to Carson Benge in center field. There's a lot of things that Cody Bellinger does well in a baseball field. Do I think he'd hit 29 homers for the Mets the way he did last year with that short porch at Yankee Stadium? No, I don't think that Cody Bellinger will be a near 30 home run hitter. But could Cody Bellinger still pop you 20, steal you 10 bags, put up a 800 OPS, play great defense in multiple spots? Yes, he can still do that, and he's still only 30 years old. So Cody Bellinger makes a good amount of sense to me as a free agent that fits a lot of potential needs for the Mets. And if you sign him and you also bring back Pete Alonso, well, now you have this great luxury where you just see where the roster takes you. If Carson Benge is ready to go, he's in center field, Bellinger's in right, Soto's in left, and you roll from there. If Carson Benge isn't ready, maybe you slide Bellinger into center. Maybe it's Jeff McNeil in right or Jeff McNeil in left with Soto in the other spot, and you wait for Benge. Also, let's just say everything works out brilliantly. And not only is Carson Benge your starting center fielder, all of a sudden Jett Williams is pushing to make the big league roster. And Jett's going to actually play some center, and they're going to move Benge into right. And all of a sudden you have these two top prospects who are helping your outfield. Where does Bellinger go? Oh, actually, let's put Bellinger at first. He's going to play better defense there than Pete Alonso, and you slide Pete to DH. So there's just so much roster flexibility that Cody Bellinger can provide the New York Mets that it does seem like the most likely fit if the Mets are going to go out and get a star for a corner outfield spot. I already talked about Fernando Tatis Jr. prior to the Brandon Nimmo trade, and I was trying to map out a Nimmo to the Padres trade where he was part of a bigger package that went out. And even on the show, I sort of came to a conclusion that I didn't think that would get it done or that Nimmo would be attractive to the Padres. And ultimately, where I ended up finishing off that show is I felt like the Mets had the capital to get Fernando Tatis, but I think they have to trade Carson Benge to do it. And I don't think that is the worst thing in the world because, look, as much as I love Carson Benge as a prospect, his best possible outcome is Fernando Tatis. And I don't even know if it is that. Like, I don't know if he could be the type of athlete that Tatis is in right field and be that level of a platinum glove type defender. Fernando Tatis is a superstar. So that's where, as much as you say, you can't put Carson Benge on the table for anyone, that's the one guy that you would. But I just don't necessarily see that trade materializing. I don't know if the Padres are really looking to trade their best player. So when you look at the market and you try to find the star corner outfielder the New York Mets could acquire via trade or through free agency, there's really just those two guys. There's not anybody else that stands out. We'll talk about some other options in the final segment, whether it be, a Ryan O'Hearn, who could play some outfield, can play some first base, Mike Tauchman, who is non-tendered. There's some guys who are on the market, but if you're looking to get a plus contributor, if you're looking to add an outfielder that is better than Brandon Nimmo was, those are the two guys in free agency. And we're going to have more time this offseason to dive deeper into each of their cases. What are they going to get on their contract? Who are the other teams that are in on them? We'll spend time on each of these guys individually, but today it's about trying to look at the entire market and identify the targets the Mets could be after. And those are the two guys that I think everybody is going to be talking about until they sign with other teams, because they're the flashy names that would make the Mets a lot better next season. But there's another way to go about it. The Mets now, because of some roster flexibility and not having a blocked runway for Carson Benge in any way, shape, or form, looks like they can actually trade for a center fielder with control. So is that the way the Mets should go? We're going to talk about some options in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Plus, right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So you put down a $5 bet. If it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. I'd love to get there by Thanksgiving because we're just so close. It's like, 12 away, 15 away. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and help us get closer to that goal. Now, let's talk about the other option the New York Mets have, and that's to go out and trade for a center fielder. We've talked about the center field market throughout this offseason, and one of the issues the Mets had was if they were to trade for Jarren Duran before they moved Brandon Nimmo. Well, all right, that's your outfield. Jarren Duran, Brandon Nimmo, and Juan Soto. Well, where does Carson Benge factor in? The Mets needed to move Nimmo to clear up a spot to maybe make an acquisition because they feel that confident that Carson Benge is going to be part of the picture. And also, if you look at the farm system, Jett Williams can be part of that picture in the outfield. AJ Ewing in AA could be part of the picture. Nick Morabito just got added to the 40-man roster. He could be part of the picture. So there's a lot of options the Mets have in this farm system. I didn't even mention Ryan Clifford, who could get some playing time in a corner outfield spot, although I think it's more likely that he is a first baseman in the big leagues. But I think he's good enough now where he can hold his own and be versatile enough where he can jump out to left and come back to first base. So the Mets have some prospects, but they now have the flexibility without Nimmo on the books to maybe go out and get a guy that has control. And that's where there are two guys that jump out. You have Jarren Duran and Byron Buxton. Jarren Duran, I think right now is my favorite pick to complete this Mets outfield because he was my favorite pick at the trade deadline as well. You're talking about a explosive player, a guy that has led Major League Baseball in triples 2 years running. 14 triples in 2024, 13 triples in 2025. He hit 21 homers in 2024. Don't know if he'll clear 20 again, if that's reasonable or not. He hit 16 this past year, though, and did not have a good first half. So I really think the best version of Jarren Duran is what we saw in 2024, which is a guy that had an absurd amount of extra base hits, 48 doubles. That led Major League Baseball. The 14 triples and 21 homers. So what do you put that all together? That's 58, 62, 83 extra base hits in a season. That's remarkable. And he hit 285. And he also played great defense in center field. I think that Jarren Duran's value this past year was really held down by the fact that the Red Sox had a better center fielder in Ceddanne Rafaela, who was the best center fielder in baseball this past year. So they moved Duran to left. But Jarren Duran was outstanding in center in 2024. He was really good in left. This past year, the defense started off a little bit rough, and he got better as the year went on as he adjusted to playing in front of the monster with more consistency. But Jarren Duran would be a better center fielder for the Mets next year than Carson Benge. There's no question about it. And he could be a guy that you plug right near the top of your lineup, where it can be Lindor, Duran, Soto. If you do bring back Alonso and you sort of roll from there, Duran is a really interesting fit, and he is the best fit from a roster construction perspective, because he has two options. Not that that matters, but he's arbitration eligible for the next couple of years. He was in year 2 of arbitration going into this 2026 season. They already agreed on the ARB number. So he's going to make $7.7 million. He is a Super 2 player, which means he gets 4 years of arbitration instead of 3. So he still has a year of arbitration coming in 2027 and another in 2028. So you have 3 years of team control. He's making 7.7 this season. You typically can expect maybe a $3 to $4 million bump each year. So maybe he gets up to maybe it's 12 million in 2027. Maybe it ends up being 16 million in 2028. Even if that's the case, and you're talking about 8 million, 12, and then 15, you're looking at $35 million, $35 to $40 million for Jarren Duran over the next 3 years, and you're getting his age 29, 30, and 31 seasons. You are getting the rest of his absolute prime, with him still trying to push for that contract when he eventually does get to free agency as a little bit of a late bloomer when it comes to when his service time clock started. So Jarren Duran is a really ideal fit for the New York Mets because you plug him right into center field. I don't think you have to worry about some of the durability issues that you would with Byron Buxton, younger player. It just makes a lot of sense for the New York Mets to be in on Duran. The Red Sox already made a trade today. They went out and they got Sonny Gray, a guy that I talked about the Mets potentially being a fit for, and they have filled one of their big needs this offseason to get a number 2 starter in that rotation. But they still could use more pitching. The Mets have pitching prospects. They can pull off a trade, and we'll talk about what that trade can be on a show at a later date. Byron Buxton is another player that we've talked about this offseason. He has a contract that pays him about $15 million per season with 3 years left, a full no-trade clause, which at one point he said he would not waive. But now, after watching such a huge part of their roster get traded at the deadline, with the potential of more guys getting traded this offseason, Byron Buxton might actually be available. And if he is, there are a few center fielders in baseball who are better when they're healthy. This guy hit 35 home runs in 126 games while playing passable defense in center field. The thing is, he's not a great defender in center field. Jarren Duran, I think, would still be a great defender. So I think that Duran is more of a David Stearns fit than Byron Buxton is. And Buxton's going to his age 32 season with a long injury track record. I'm more like Duran than Buxton. And then the third option that you have as far as trying to get a center fielder is in free agency, and that's Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader is 31 years old. It's 32 in June. Oh, wow. I just found out he shares a birthday with my dad. How about that? June 3rd. But Bader is coming off a career year. He hit 277. Before that, the best he ever hit was 264 all the way back in 2018. He got on base at a 347 clip. That was a career high. His slug was nearly a career high. He put up a little bit of a better number in 2021, a 460 slug compared to this year at 449. But the OPS has never been better. 796 OPS for Harrison Bader. 17 homers, 11 stolen bases. Great defense wherever they put him in the outfield. But we know he can run it down in center field. I just don't know if I could see the Mets going back to the well on Bader. And this is the time for Harrison Bader to finally cash in on a multi-year deal. In free agency, he's only signed 1 year. So this would be a chance for him to get a 2, maybe even a 3-year deal as the only starting center fielder on the market. I think he's going to price himself out of the Mets because I don't think the Mets would look at Harrison Bader as a multi-year commitment for them with all the top prospects coming. And this guy should get more than 1 year in free agency. Doesn't even have a qualifying offer attached. He was traded midseason. It just makes all the sense in the world for Harrison Bader to sign somewhere else where he can get a longer term deal. That leaves us with an interesting place for the New York Mets. We've gone through 3 primary options, and they're all going to be expensive in different ways. Kyle Tucker could be a massive contract that could go beyond 10 years and beyond $400 million. Cody Bellinger is an interesting case where you have a player who has been a little bit inconsistent over recent years. The ceiling is maybe a little bit more limited. The floor is super high with the defense and the versatility. But if he's going to get a 6-year deal and he's going to make over $25 million per, did you really trade Nimmo to sign Bellinger and be locked into that contract? It doesn't really fit the direction the Mets could be going. So is the direction the Mets could be going one where they just stay internal and they don't even go out and get a free agent? Or if they do, it's a 1-year stopgap. We're going to talk about a scenario the Mets don't want to hear about to close out the show in just a minute. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service. We get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. And during the season, you get the line graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So let's talk about the options that Mets fans are not going to be excited about, the internal options. Is there a world where the New York Mets say, all right, our outfield's set. We cleared Nimmo. We have Carson Benge ready to go. We got Juan Soto. And now Jeff McNeil can't play second, so he's our left fielder. There is a chance that happens. I think it's unlikely, but I would not rule it out entirely. And the one thing I don't know about why the Mets made this trade. Did they make this trade because they were eager to pursue other top corner outfielders on the market? Or did they make this trade because they are so excited about their farm system that they actually believe that they can get 2 starting outfielders out of the system for this upcoming season? It would be bold if that's what the Mets did, but it is just curious. And even if it's not about this season, if they think that in 2027, they're going to have 2 above average outfielders that come through the system, and they still have Juan Soto, who probably doesn't want to move into the infield until he's in his 30s. Like, I imagine there's a little bit of an ego of Juan Soto, the right fielder, and not wanting to be the DH before he's 30 or come in and try to learn first base. I think there's part of that with keeping him in the outfield and not even entertaining moving him to the DH spot or moving him to left. So far, we haven't heard anything about that. There is a side of it that does come into that ego and not necessarily thinking that it's wrong for the team, but thinking that, oh, I can be a really great outfielder. I've been a Gold Glove finalist multiple times. And who knows how he really views himself out there. But the point stands, if Soto is in the outfield for the next 3 seasons, can you fill 2 of those spots internally? And with Carson Benge, you have one answer. Nick Morabito just got added to the 40-man roster. You have AJ Ewing, who finished the year in Double-A, and you have Jett Williams, who can play some outfield, and now second base is blocked, and he's in Triple-A ready to go. That's not even to mention Ryan Clifford again. So there are some prospects that could factor in this season, and there's also some prospects that David Stearns might not want to block for 2027. He might not want to sign Kyle Tucker to a decade-long deal because he thinks we don't need to invest $40 million a year in Tucker. We got guys that are coming. So I don't know if they would really be bold enough to not get anybody and to just roll as is. I feel like they're going to acquire somebody, but Is there a world where instead of trading for Duran or Buxton, instead of signing Bellinger or Tucker, they look at the market and they say, all right, let's look at Austin Hayes. Let's look at Max Kepler. Let's look lower down the list. Let's look at, how about Mike Yastrzemski? Now, I'll tell you what, Mike Yastrzemski is a good baseball player. Mike Yastrzemski would have a pretty solid season, I think, if the New York Mets acquired him. Is he going to set the world on fire? No, but he's been remarkably consistent. He's a guy that's going to get on base at a pretty decent clip. He has got on base at a 333 clip this past year. He popped 17 homers, plays good defense in the corners. He's not a bad player. Mike Tauchman is coming off a good season, but the poor guy just can't get tendered a contract. The White Sox non-tendered him after his season where he put up a really good offensive year, 9 home runs, but his OPS was 756. Not a good defender, but passable in left field. He's out there. You have Michael Conforto if you want to bank on a bounce back. You can bring back Starling Marte. Well, that'd probably be more to DH than to be an outfielder, but he's on the market. You have Adolis Garcia that hit the market and probably can be had on a 1-year prove-it deal. Lane Thomas coming off an injury-plagued season. Randall Grichuk is 34, but he's out there. So you look at the market, there are some names that you could sign as a stopgap, knowing you still have Jeff McNeil and knowing that you have top prospects coming that could push any of those guys out of the picture. So it's just an interesting thing that I think everyone assumes that they're going to get a top of the market star to replace Brandon Nimmo. And I still lean that way. I think Jarren Duran is the one that I like the most, but I'm not at all going to push off the notion that the Mets are in on Cody Bellinger because he makes a ton of sense for this team. I just want to throw it out there, though, that there's a world where it could be Jeff McNeil. It could be Adolis Garcia. It could be Mike Yastrzemski. It would be hilarious if it was Michael Conforto, but boy, was he bad with the Dodgers. I just don't know exactly what David Stearns' plan is. And I really do wonder how much is he bought in on this system. If he really believes that A.J. Ewing is going to be an elite defensive center fielder who could be a top of the order bat, and he believes that Carson Benge is a 5-tool player that can do it all on the field. If those are his beliefs, does he really invest in a Tucker, in a Bellinger? Does he give up a prospect like Ewing to get a Jarren Duran if he loves Ewing or if he loves Jett Williams? That's the unknown. That's what makes the offseason so exciting because good luck trying to predict what David Stearns is thinking. I did a show a week ago that Brandon Nimmo was not going to get traded because how could they convince him to waive that no trade clause? And what team was going to take him on unless they were getting off a bad salary? Granted, that part came true. Marcus Semien would not be making $26 million in the 2026 season if he was a free agent right now. But they got the deal done. They got Nimmo to waive the no trade, and they found a player that they believe can help them in a pretty major way for this upcoming season because they value the defense that Semien brings that much, and they think that they can get a little more out of the bat. I'm fascinated to see what comes next. On the show, what's going to come next, we are going to do a Jarren Duran podcast at some point coming up for sure. We're going to talk about Cody Bellinger probably. I don't know if I even think it's worth it to spend a full show on Kyle Tucker, but we're going to go through these options on the market and see what makes the most sense for the New York Mets. When I dive in a little bit deeper, maybe I like Bellinger more than Duran, although right now, again, I'm leading Duran as my favorite. Those are the two guys that just jump out, though. So if you're looking for a conclusion on who are the star players the Mets should be in on, to me right now, it's Bellinger and it's Duran. Because I think Tucker might just be a little bit too much money when you just got out of a contract. I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is a pipe dream because I just don't think the Padres are going to trade him. And if you do, if they do, again, you might have to give up Benge. And if that's the case, I'd rather just spend a little more to sign Tucker than to give up Benge to get Tatis. At that point, how much better are you? You still have to get another outfielder. And that's where those other names just start to climb up and make the most sense, with Duran in center or Bellinger as the corner outfielder the Mets acquire. It's going to be fun. So tomorrow, I might do a Thanksgiving show. I got to check and see what I've done in past years. We might do a little Thanksgiving special. But otherwise, I'll be back for the rest of the week. We'll do another show for Friday, and we'll kind of see exactly what is going on in baseball. Is there any other news that takes place on Wednesday? You never know. Maybe David Stearns sneaks in another move right before Turkey Day and gives us some more interesting things to think about. But that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, be part of our texting service, you can go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets or find the link in the episode description. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 podcast network, and thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day.